So the plan for this video, guys, I'm going to show you guys how I built this universal power box. I wanted a box that was completely universal. I wanted to be able to use it in the summer, the winter. I wanted to be able to use it in my boat, my kayak. I wanted to bring it camping. I wanted to be able to throw out my jet sled, bring it on the ice to power some of my electronics. I wanted it to be able to hook up to the GoPros. And I'll show you guys what I come up with. I'm going to show you guys what I use for a box, how I wired it on the inside. I'll show you guys that in a minute. What I use for accessory ports, switches. I'm going to do some basics on some of the wire connections. I am going to do a separate video on how I solder the connections and how you can just play around, with different connection points with a box like this. So I just want to show you guys real quick. This is all run off a master switch, and I'll get you guys right up close in a minute. But I'm going to clear the table off, so I just want to show you guys real quick. So this switch here runs these two charging ports, and off this just one port, I can run my ice fishing flasher. I can run my Helix 7, which I use in my kayak, and I'm going to use on the ice this season as an ice fishing flasher. And I got a little LED light strip right here. This is more or less just an example, but you could actually use this as a functional light strip. I don't plan on running 3 devices off of these ports, but I just wanted to show you guys. I have 2 fast charge USB ports here. Instantly starts charging. And I just wanted this so you could bring it anywhere and have some extra power. We always lose power up here in Maine, and it's always good just to have a nice, easy system that you can charge your electronics. Alright, so now I'm going to clear all this stuff off, and I'll get right into the box. I'll show you guys the top here. I'll flip it over, show you guys the inside, and we'll get started on the build. Alright, so this is a top view. As you can see, I have a switch, 4 switches, and 2 plugs. This is all run off a master switch. Nothing will run until this master switch is turned on. So these switches don't do anything till you flip here. And I have this wired so it comes right into a voltmeter, as you can see. And now we can run our ports. So this first one here, I have going to 2 super bright LEDs. And these are the Hut System LEDs. Just these little LED light bulbs, and these things are super bright. And this one here is my 2-port fast charge for my cell phones and other electronics. Has a little background red light there. And this one just runs a marine. It's actually a cigarette lighter, but they make a bunch of different accessories for this, so the options are pretty much endless. And this one here runs a charging port. This is the one I showed you them electronics with. And I just made these out of 2 stainless steel bolts. And I have wing nuts here that you just tighten down to make sure you get a good connection. But yeah, this is what the top looks like. I set this up a specific way for how I wanted it set up. I didn't want to do a switch bar and have to remember what switch went to what accessory. So what I tried to do is organize the switches so the closest switch to whatever accessory is what will run it. So this switch is right next to the voltmeter, so it turns the voltmeter on as a power switch. And closest one to the USB runs the USB. Moving down, this one gets the lights. Over here, closest one, runs that socket. And over here, this one runs a charging post. So for me, that's how I wanted to set it up. You can set these up any way you'd like, but that's how I set it up. And I still have room for 2 other accessories here. It could be another USB, or whatever I want to put. Yeah, and this is the box I use. It's an MTM case guard concealed carry case. It's basically the same size as their 50 cal ammo cans, but I went with this one just because I like the red a little better. But I'm going to show you guys the inside. And don't let this scare you. It's going to look like a mess. I know it looks like a mess, but I'm going to take all this out and I'm going to show you guys step by step how to make this. And as of right now, this is all run off of one 12 volt, 12 amp hour battery. I am going to swap to lithium here pretty soon. Alright, so now we're going to get right into the build and how I set this up. We're going to start here from the battery, and I'm going to work through, give you guys a brief overview of this, then we're going to tear it down and I'll show you guys how I built it. So starting from the battery, I have a piggyback connector on each one of these terminals, and this top piggyback here goes straight to my charger. This SEE plug charger that goes to my wall charger here. So all I have to do is plug this in, plug it into the wall, and it charges my battery right down through this piggyback connection. And the main line comes out of here. This is crimped and soldered. I'll show you guys how I do that in the next video. And that's actually what runs out to the main part of the build here. So now that we went over the battery, we're going to pretty much leave the battery alone for a minute, and we're going to head over here to the lid. And this is the main part of the build here. And if you guys remember, when I kicked the master switch on, it powered the voltmeter and the rest of the accessories. And how that happened is the power comes from the positive. I have this coming to this center master switch here. And in a minute, I'll show you guys how these switches work. But the power comes in, and from here, I have it piggybacked coming out to the voltmeter and the fuse block. And from here, the fuse block is then powered to run all the other accessories. This will make more sense once I tear this apart and you can see it a little better. So this is how the positive works, and I have one central ground location right here. This is a bolt that I drilled through the side of this little support wall, and from the battery, again, don't pay any attention to the charger, the main connection comes from the negative, goes all the way to the central location. And from here, all my other accessories will go to this central location to be grounded. That's what will complete the circuit. So there we have the basics of how I have this set up. And again, this will make more sense once I get this stripped down and you guys can see how I assemble it. But I'm going to take some time off camera. I'm going to disassemble this completely, and then I'll show you guys how I wired it. Alright, so we're basically stripped down. There's a few things I didn't take out. I didn't take out the fuse block. This is just held in by a few screws that go all the way through and come up through here. Just squeaks by so it doesn't hit the handle. And I left a few switches in just because them things are actually hard to get out. And I actually broke the wing of this one, and I didn't want to break any other ones, so I just left these switches in. And that's going to be the first thing we're going to talk about, you know, because this project is pretty much run off of switches. So I'm just going to pull in a switch here and show you guys how to wire these up. If you guys can see how this one's gold, kind of a brassy color. This is your ground. This is your ground on all of these switches. So your ground's got to come from this switch and attach to a central point, or ground it elsewhere if you configure this a little different than I do it. But the way I'm doing this is always the ground. The gold is always ground. The middle one is always your power in. So that's either your power in straight from your battery, or in my case, it's going to be straight in from the fuse block over here. So the inside one is power in, the outside one is power out. It's power out to your accessory. So the inside is your power from your battery, in my case the fuse block. The outside one is power to your accessory. And if you don't set it up that way, your accessory is not going to work. We're going to start this build right from the battery, and this is already connected. And again, I'm going to make a separate video on how I make these and solder these. So red goes to red, so we're going to hook this up to the positive. And these are pretty stiff connections. And same thing, we have a piggybacked ground that we're going to slide on. And you can see the piggyback is still available. See that piggyback sticking up? That's what we're going to hook our charger to. So here's our charger. We're going to go black to black, which is negative to negative, ground to ground. And we're going to go positive to positive, red to red. So now our battery is set up with a charger, and it's set up to send power to the main part of the build here. So the master switch, which will be right here, is going to send power to my voltmeter and the fuse block. So we're going to get that set up right now. I'm going to flip this over, show you guys how I pop these in. I'm just going to hook up my first ground connection here to this post. And all I did is just took a number 10. I got these at Home Depot. It's a number 10, 24 by 1 inch. And I think that was like $1 or $2 for a bag of them. And this is made with this type of terminal. I'm just using the screw that came in the bag. I'm going to get my ground snug down, and this is going to be the master ground. That's nice and snug. All right, so now we have battery, ground, and now we're going to set up the main power that goes to the whole system. And these are pretty easy to set up. If you see the circle there, that's off. When you push it down, that'll power the switch on. So we're just going to drop this in so it orients that same way. And you want to hear a nice little snap. Once you hear that snap, it's pretty well in. And just going to make sure that rubber gasket is kind of where it needs to be. And I'm just checking to make sure them wings come out, which they did, so that's in nice and snug. Now we're going to get our voltmeter in. And how I did these is I used a 3/4 inch step drill, which got me a 3/4 inch hole, and I took my Dremel with a little sanding bit and just sanded out. I took my time, so these fit in nice and snug. With these, same thing. These are ones you don't hear a click, but you want to make sure they're nice and flush and flat. And these come with these little thin plastic nuts, and you can pretty much get these hand tight. I'm sure they make a tool, but I would imagine if you put too much pressure, it would actually break that plastic nut. So I get these hand tight, and that's fine. Okay, so we have the ground coming from the battery to our central location. Now we got to take the main power, and we got to send it to the middle pole of the switch. Because again, this is all run off a master switch. This center one is the master. So nothing works until this switch sends power from the outer pole to the fuse block. The only thing that'll work independently with this switch is the voltmeter. So we're going to get that wired up with a fuse block. And to get them working in unison, I made a three-way splitter. I wound these together, I soldered them, and I put electrical tape just for some durability. And I use this type of connection. That's going to go to the fuse block. And this fuse block does not have to be grounded, in case you're wondering. You ground your accessories to that central location, and that completes the circuit. Some fuse blocks do have to ground. You have to do your own research on whichever one you get. They're all different. They all have their own little way of grounding, but this one does not need its own separate grounding. And just make sure this is nice and snug. You don't want this connection rattling around, because if it rattles around, you could get a short somewhere. So now we're going to hook up the power out from our switch. And over on the voltmeter, we're going to go to the positive, which is the silver. I don't know if you can see it, the way the light's hitting it, but this is the brass. That's always your ground. So now we have power coming from the battery to our master switch. And from our master switch, we have power going out to our voltmeter and to our fuse block. And none of this will work till we ground these. So I'm going to ground the master switch. And I'm trying my best. I'm doing this one-handed. I'm holding my GoPro in my other hand. And I'm just going to loose fit that there. You would never want to leave this loose fit actually out in the field, because if these connections jump around, you could cause a short and not blow your fuses. So I'm just using this loose for now, just as I'm demonstrating. So now our switch is completely functional. Our switch turns on, but our voltmeter is not on yet because we have not grounded it. So now we're going to ground from the brass terminal over to our master ground location. And when you flip the switch, you see the voltmeter turns on. So that's how the voltmeter works with your switch here. But nothing else will work because we only have power going to the fuse block from the master switch, but we don't have anything coming out to our accessories yet. So that's what we're going to work on now. And I'm going to start with these lights because I couldn't take these out just the way I had these spliced together. And again, these are the hot system lights. These things are mega bright. The unfortunate thing with these is it comes with these little tiny wires. These are like size 20, and I'd be lying if I said these are fun to work with. So with these lights, you just put them into the hole you made, then you take this nut and just tighten it up. And these are snugged in pretty good. And what I did is I combined two of them to one switch. And what I did is I combined the negative to negative and the positive to positive. And what I did is I crimped them and then I soldered them. So we're going to get these wired up now. The switch that runs these lights is this switch right here. So we're going to remember that switch. We're going to get these wired up. All right, so now we're getting in to the fuse block here. I have fuses in all of these. These range from a 3 amp to a 5 amp fuse because that's just what I had kicking around. So what we're going to do, it doesn't really matter what terminal you use, but I'm going to just use this one here. We're going to send power. Again, this is all the power side of the project here. We're going to send power from the fuse block to the power in of the switch. Again, you have to use the power in before you can send power out. So now that we got our power going into the switch, we have to send power out to the lights, which again are connected together. So we're going to take the power, which is the red, and we're going to go to the power out terminal of our switch there. And now we need to ground the lights, which is this here, and we need to ground the actual switch itself. So we're going to ground on the brass, the gold one, and we're going to send the ground wire all the way over to the central location. And what I try to do is put no more than 3 connections before I tighten them down. So I'm going to put this connection here, which is the 3rd one, and now I'm going to tighten these 3 down with a little nut. I'm going to back these onto these 3, and I'm just going to keep working my way on this bolt till all my connections are on there. All right, so now I'm trying to get a bite on the nut, and I'm just going to tighten it up with a screwdriver. Just a little bit, enough to get that snug the rest of the way, and them are locked in solid. Them aren't going to move. All right, so now we're going to ground the light. Again, this is just the connection I came up with. You could have done this probably a million different ways, but this is what I did, and it worked fine. All right, so now we've got the ground coming from our lights. Just going to loose fit that, get everything right. It should work. So we're going to flip the master, and this is the light switch, and we got a good connection because the lights came on. So there's the lights. That was probably one of the trickier ones, just because you had to splice 2 into 1, and I had to make a few connections to go into a ground. All right, so now that our lights are taken care of, we're going to move on to our 2-bay USB port. And again, these are the fast charge. These are the 2.1 amp versus the 1 amp. So this is the switch that's going to power that. So just push that down snug. Again, we're just going to kind of snug these down with our hand. Okay, that's snugged down. And this is a switch that's going to run the USB charger. So in order for this to run, we're going to send power coming from our fuse block, which is already charged up through the master switch from the battery. We're going to send power from the fuse block to the inside pole of the switch. And now we have to ground that, so we're going to use the same type of connection. We're going to go to the brass post. Run this all the way over to the ground. I'm going to loose fit that now because we're going to work a nut onto that in just a minute. So now we need to send power from the switch to the charger. And we're going to do that by hooking up our power out on the outside terminal of the switch. And we're going to go into the positive of the USB charger. And we've got to send a ground from the USB charger to our central location. Sneak this under the wire here. Okay, so now I'm going to snug these down like I showed you before. I'm not going to show you guys on camera because it's actually kind of a little bit difficult to do one-handed. Now we're going to check for function. We're going to turn on the master switch. And you can see that turns on. Red LED light kicked on and the switch kicked on. So our USB switch is all ready to go. And now we're going to move on to this cigarette lighter style port. Going to be just like the USB port, and this is the switch that runs that. Alright, so now I'm going to show you guys how I make my charging posts. They're really simple. They may look a little confusing, and this is what I used. It's a number 10 24 by 3/4 of an inch. So what I do is I take the bolt, the washer, and a nut, and I'm going to start with a positive. So I'm going to take the bolt, the washer, and the positive terminal, and I'm going to screw this into the hole. And I did undersize the hole a little bit just so this was plenty snug, and I'm going to screw this down, and it's going to make a nice snug fit. Alright, so now we're going to take this little nut, we're just going to screw it on the charging post. I'll lock the back end with a screwdriver, and I'm going to tighten with a wrench. So that's nice and solid. All right, and it's basically the exact same thing for the negative. Screw this down, and same thing. We're gonna tighten this nut down. Okay. So now that we have our accessory ports in, I'm gonna wire it just like we did all the other ones. We're going to send power from the fuse block to the inner pole of the switch. All right, now we're going to send our power out to our accessory, which is a charging post. And now we need to ground all these together. So we're going to take the ground from the switch and we're going to ground to central location. And we're also going to send our ground from our charging post to our central location, just like that. And now I'm just going to snug up all these grounds with a wing nut. Wing nut really helps just to make sure they're all gonna lock down good, nice and tight, making sure we get a nice snug fit. You just want to make sure that you're really cautious when you do this, because you don't want to put any undue stress on any of these connections. But that's all snug down. All my grounds are nice and tight. I'm just doing a quick double check, make sure everything's hooked up, lined up right, make sure I didn't miss wire, anything. You know, sometimes when you move these around, you can kind of loosen up a connection a little bit. All right, everything looks good. Just did a good double check. Everything looks good, nice and solid. All right, now we're gonna see how we did. We're gonna see how all this works. Master switch, LEDs, USB, that's working. That switch works. I know this this plug works. It wires up the exact same way as the USB. And let's see how we did on our charging posts. We haven't tested them yet. So we're gonna go positive, negative, and let's see if we have light. And we do. So charging posts are working fine. So we're gonna wrap it up there, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Hopefully you guys learned something from it. You guys can use this virtually any way you'd like. You can build it any way you'd like. There's different ways of building it. This is just how I did mine. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. I'll try my best to answer them. Again, I'm going to do a complete other video of how I make all my connections, how I solder them. I'm going to go through all the different connections you can make. I didn't want to throw that into this video because I didn't want it to be too long. But hopefully you guys enjoyed. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.